Armor that's made entirely of magic, spells that are used to strengthen armor, or spells that simply reduce the incoming damage to the wearer are prominent in many forms of pulp culture. So what I want to talk about today is if these spells and these magical abilities existed in real life, if this magical armor existed in real life, how would it work? To decide how these spells would work in real life, we first have to take a look at how they're portrayed within these different forms of media. Now in Skyrim, the Oak Flesh spell from the Alteration Tree, or its higher level equivalents, whether it be Stone Flesh, Ebony Flesh, or what have you, the spell works by increasing, or the description of the spell works, by increasing the user's armor rating, and the Dragon Aspect Shout works much in the same way. In the book The Well of Eternity, which is part of the War of the Ancients trilogy by Richard A. Knack, one of the main characters casts a spell on himself to ward off the cold. In the same scene, an animal attacks him, but because of the spell, the animal's claws just barely tear his clothing. The character then states that he would have been killed if he hadn't been casting that spell that he had used to protect himself from the cold. Now I'm aware that the World of Warcraft and the Skyrim universes are not connected and that they're completely different, but I want to take the spells and how they work from each universe and compare what they have in common to find some common ground in which we might be able to discover how these spells work. So between these two examples, there are a couple of ways in which the spell might work. It could simply increase the durability of the armor. That could make it a little bit more flexible, so when a weapon strikes it, the armor is able to absorb that impact. It can make the armor harder, meaning it's harder to cut or harder to pierce. It can also do this by decreasing the mass of the incoming weapon. So as the weapon swings in, the mass of it, maybe it weighs, let's say, 3 pounds, and as it comes in, by the time it strikes, it only weighs half a pound. So having decreased mass would mean less momentum, which means the weapon wouldn't hit the armor as hard. It could also decrease the speed of the weapon, therefore it leaves the weight of it alone, but as it comes in, it slows it down. So by the time it hits, doesn't have as much momentum again, which means it's not going to hit as hard. Both Skyrim's and Richard A. Knack's description of the spells lend themselves well towards the idea that it simply increases the armor durability through hardness or flexibility. Because Skyrim says that the spell increases the armor rating, and Richard A. Knack described the spell as preventing the animal claws from tearing through the clothing. But there is one issue. Why would the character have cast the spell to ward off the cold if it only increased durability? Increased durability just means strengthened armor. It doesn't mean more insulation. Keep in mind that there is no physical alteration of the armor that is described within the book or shown within Skyrim when the spells are cast. So what about decreasing the weapon's mass? There are still a few issues. Cold doesn't have mass, so again it wouldn't really help. 2 certain spells in Skyrim, like the flame spells, would have next to no mass, yet the armor spell still is effective against them. And 3, if the spells work this way, they could be defeated quite easily with a really sharp sword. Sure, mass helps the blade cut, but sharpness can easily make up for that, particularly if you're doing putting your weapon against the opponent and then doing push cuts or draw cuts or simply thrusts. At that point, I realize less on mass and more on weapon sharpness. So what about decreasing the speed? Well, still no. Not if it's purely decreasing speed alone. Because again, push cuts, pull cuts, and thrusts could still easily defeat the spell because you can drag a really sharp blade across somebody's blade quite slowly and still cut them. And you can press a pointed weapon into somebody and it's going to pierce them even if it's moving really slow. And again, speed doesn't really affect the cold. So how would the spell work? I listed like 3 ways in which the spells might work, and I basically said all of them won't. So how do I think they would work? Well, personally, I believe it would decrease the speed of the incoming weapons, but in a very, very specific way. The spell would inform an invisible, squishy-like, high-friction spell or aurora around the user. And then anything that came into contact with it would be slowed down immensely. And it would meet extreme resistance, and it would make movement extremely difficult. Cuts and thrusts would still have to make it through the slushy material. So you could still be cut, and you could still be stabbed. However, if the blade would be in contact with the user, they couldn't just even pull real slowly, because it's not just a matter of minimizing the speed. The blade isn't just moving slowly, it's actually fighting against something. So it makes the user put in a lot of effort to get through it. Same with the thrust, actually has to kind of pierce this spell. It's not just being slowed down by the spell. So as if a full swing or full thrust came in, it would make contact with the spell and it would lose speed and momentum along the way. And hopefully by the time it made contact, it wouldn't have enough to do anything. And then, so if the user tried to do a draw cut or a push cut, they'd still be meeting the resistance of the spell and this high friction, and they would have trouble overcoming it. So why would the character have cast a spell to fight off the cold? Well, here's why. Body heat would take longer periods of time to escape from the body. Because of this squishy substance, this high friction substance, as body heat goes through, it's going to have to fight through that spell as well, meaning it's going to linger closer to the body longer, warming the user. This applies for cold air coming in too. As the cold air comes in, it's going to have to fight through this spell. So body heat lingers close to the body, keeps you warmer or longer. Cold air has to fight through it, and so by the time it gets you, your escaping body heat has warmed it up somewhat, so you're not getting hit by these frigid temperatures. And it would reduce the effects of wind chill simply because as the wind hits you, it would be slowed down significantly. So what about spells? How would it affect spells? Well, it really depends on the type of spell, but if let's say you're using Skyrim's flame spell, which is shooting a column flame out of the attacker's hand, well, the flames would hit this barrier, this magical armor, and meet that high resistance, that high friction, and have to come through it. By the time it reached the skin, it would be cooled down significantly. If it was like a fireball or something like that that explodes on impact, it would hit this spell and it'd meet such high friction so quickly, I believe that the spell would erupt. So it wouldn't actually make contact with the skin or the armor directly and then explode. It would make contact with the spell and explode. And then the heat and the flames from that explosion would still have to fight its way through the spell and then through any armor the user was wearing, giving plenty of time for the heat from that flames to die off by the time it gets to you. So this high friction, high resistance magical aurora, I think fits the way that the armor spells are described in Skyrim and within the War of the Ancients trilogy very well. For example, the armor rating, it doesn't necessarily increase the actual durability of the armor, but it would increase the character's overall armor rating, because armor rating doesn't necessarily have to refer specifically to a piece of armor and how durable that piece of armor is. Just look at it as armor rating as a synonym for defense rating. So take a gambeson. A gambeson offers a good amount of protection. Now throw a chainmail shirt or something over that, and you've increased your armor rating without actually increasing the individual durability of the chainmail or of the gambeson. Just your overall protection is much higher. So that's why I'm looking at armor rating and not as a meaning for specifically a piece of armor. And the fact that the armor rating increases overall, and it's not just affecting just your chest piece or just your arms or just your helmet, you just cast it and it affects your entire body, kind of lends itself towards this idea as well, that it affects your overall defense rating and not specific armor durability, because you don't cast it on an individual piece of armor, you just cast it on the user, and the entire user's body gets its effects. So there you have it. That's how I believe armor spells would work in real life, if they existed, of course. And thank you for watching.